Okay, so welcome back everybody. We're in the middle of Perek Lamed Zayin. We continue Perek Lamed Zayin, indeed a long Perek. I believe it's it would contain probably even a few more classes. But let's go on over here. Rolling on page 94. Which about 5 lines from the bottom. Umi'achar. So if we remember, and those of you who don't exactly remember, or those of you who are new, just joining in this evening, we encourage you to see the previous classes on this you could see it on this very website, the Tanya link, or the link box Tanya. Type in Tanya, or on the TanyaOnline.com website, which is the same class, just with the ability to follow the class with the text, and very easy access to the previous classes again, which you can follow the text as well, with the text as well on the previous classes. I encourage you, those who want to pick up generally the messages up till this point, but namely in the previous classes in this very chapter, or even the overall, to say, as we mentioned, that even though the entire Tanya is a very beautiful sequence, chapter after chapter, the connection from one chapter to the other is very obvious, but 36 and 37 carries the overall very important message, or the message of the mandate of the Yid in this very physical world, why he was sent here, what is Hashem's master plan, and how do we implement this master plan. And this is again, namely this latter statement, how we implement this master plan is the message of the Alter Rebbe here in chapter 37. And he begins saying that we take every mitzvah, which again we mentioned time and again, the significant majority of our mitzvahs deals with this very physical world, taking the physical and utilizing it for the sake of the mitzvah, elevating it to Hashem via doing the mitzvah with it. He gives a few examples over here. Mezuzah, or rather, tefillin, mezuzah, Sefer Torah, it's parchment, which comes from the physical animal, the skin of the physical animal, and you do a mitzvah with it. This is the way you remove it. You remove it from its nourishing up till the moment that you do the mitzvah with it, from klipas nega, and you elevate it, you connect it to kedusha. Again, we explain what does it mean receiving its energy from here, and then you change the source of energy. All this is mentioned in the past in general, and even when we learned it, even in this very chapter, we re-explained this idea and how exactly all this works. So, but basically, it is the physical that we do the mitzvah with, and we transform that item to godliness, to to its connection with its godly source. Hence, the flow of energy becomes a godly flow of energy from Hashem into this very physical world. And that is namely the mitzvahs which we do, which we involve our action, and we involve it's dealing with the physicality of this world. And then Alter Rebbe even goes on, he says even learning Torah we do the same, and then he so organizedly goes on the next step that in such an organized manner, rather, goes on in the next step that the energy which we had in order to perform the mitzvah comes from this very physical world, the bread we eat, the water we drink, and so on and so forth, and that gives us koach, gives us the energy in order to learn Torah and do mitzvahs. And so that itself follows along in the spirit and it follows along in the path of elevation, meaning that itself is elevated. It's not when I just commence with a mitzvah, that's when I'm engaging with the physical world and elevating the physical world to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it's even before that, or when I do that retroactively, everything all my previous engagements with this physical world, which gave me the koach, the energy, in order to elevate, in order to perform the mitzvah, that itself is elevated. Again, if the bread which I ate, which gave me the energy to do the mitzvah, that bread itself, which is again, bread, is elevated to Hashem. The bread itself is very much part and parcel of this physical world. Again, this is all under that umbrella message of HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted a dira b'tachtenim, a dwelling place in this very physical world, or the physical world should be attuned to the godly reality that is the master plan of Hashem. And so the bread, for example, it comes from the flour and the water, which is again very much part and parcel of this Olam Hazeh, this physical world that is elevated to Hashem. And with this, my Nefesh Bahamis, my own animal soul, which is basically the vitalizing soul, Kidan Nefesh Abasa B'Damhi, which till now receives its energy from Klipas Noga, also is elevated. And if it's me, it's another party, and another party, collectively, the world ultimately is elevated from its state of receiving its energy from the impure forces. But again, we said that not necessarily the extreme impure forces, which is anything associated with an Aveda. Hashem says, do not eat this, do not engage with that, maybe in speech and thought. In action, that is certainly related to Shalosh Klipas Atzmei, is the lower level of Klipa, but generally this world, as long as it has no connection, if there's no connection to any violation of Hashem's desire, it receives its energy from Klipas Nega, from that intermediary Klipa, meaning that Klipa which has the ability to be transformed. And when every Yid does his Aveda, Sayim Mitzvah Aseh and Leises, and against these with Leises, and again, this is where we pretty much invested the last week's class, dealing what transpires, or important part of last week's class, what transpires when a person, Chas v'Shalom, engages in sin. The negative energy flows through his sinews, and that again would be an obstacle for the elevation of Olam Hazeh, because he's anchored. The energy which he connected with, which flows through a system, anchors him in a way that it's somewhat to a great degree holds him down and limits his ability to move on with the elevation, even though, as we mentioned, the person has to constantly continue in any mitzvah, say positive mitzvah that comes to hand, he should fulfill it regardless. But the negative result or the negative consequences of Chas v'Shalom violating this, what Hashem says not to do, because one engages with the Shalosh Klipas Atzmei, with the lower level of impurity, which Ein Lahem Aliyah Leilam, there's no elevation. This is what Hashem says stay away from. So this is the Leises, and then the Mitzvah say he constantly is elevating and transforming this world, starting from his own animal soul, his own vitalizing soul, and again, which is a result, and in conjunction with his investment in the mitzvah, say all the mitzvahs and learning Torah, and again the energy which he received in order to do the mitzvah, learning Torah, which is also part of the physical world, is also elevated, and collectively the world ultimately changes, and the world becomes a dwelling place for Hashem. Yet, this is what we're doing for the last 3,300 years. This is what Am Yisrael's invested. So when Mashiach comes, as the Alter Rebbe begins this very chapter of 37, that again, it just doesn't come, Mashiach doesn't come out of nowhere. It's an accumulative process, or it's a accumulation of all this Torah mitzvahs which Eden throughout all generations have performed. With that, they transform this physical world. And when Mashiach comes, everything will just come to light, to come to a full state of manifestation. All our involvement over the 3,300 years in making HaKadosh Baruch Hu a dwelling place in this very physical world. And here will we continue. Mi'achar. Achar shekol es nefesh ha'chayun shebechlol es Yisrael. Yetiyeh mirkov v'kedusha l'Hashem. And as a result, because as such, that the general nefesh ha'chayunis of all of Am Yisrael, or the general vitalizing energy which vitalizes the Yid and collectively all the Yid. And again, you're not dealing with the godly soul, and the godly soul is always and remains a part of God, but we're dealing with the vital soul which makes the Yid the personal life, which is the Nefesh HaChayunis, Nefesh Bahamis, which we explained again its connection, and as this being one soul, the Nefesh HaChayunis, Nefesh Bahamis, which vitalizes the Yid, it gives him simply the physical energy, and with this he's able to do the mitzvah. And again, individually and collectively, Klal Yisrael, that all of Israel, Tia Merkava Kedushal Hashem, will be a chariot to a holy and a divine chariot to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We explained last week the notion of the chariot in detail, which was the end, culminating words of the Alter Rebbe in the previous class, in which we took a few moments to explain the Merkava. But in brief, Merkava is a chariot which is just a vehicle to bring the Rochev, the one who's riding on the chariot, to its place, to its destination. And that's why the Avis were called the Merkava, because Hashem was the rider, and they were just a vehicle to bring the rider, which is Hashem, from wherever he wanted to go and everything he wanted to implement in this very physical world. And that's why they were called Merkava. And just like a chariot, it doesn't even argue to go right or to go straight, to go left, wherever the roche, wherever the rider wants it to go, that's where it goes. Completely selfless. And this is what ultimately the mandate of the Yid is, to be that Merkava, to try to be that chariot to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that I am just a vehicle to where HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to go. In other words, just like a vehicle takes the rider from point A to point B, wherever the rider wants to go, so to Hashem has his plan in bringing the Ein Sof, the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to be manifest in this very physical world, and I am just a vehicle. Am Yisrael is just a vehicle, Tia Merkava, a chariot, a holy and divine chariot like HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to bring about this Ratzin, this master plan of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So as basically, again, everything is the culminating, the culmination of this build-up of the Alter Rebbe, that every Yid does his Avodah, does his service. And as such, the Nefesh HaChayunis, the vitalizing soul which exists with all of Am Yisrael, will ultimately be a Merkava, a chariot, a divine chariot, Hashem Ozai, Gam Kol Sachai Shalom Hazeh, Shehi Klipas Nega, Achshov, Teitzi Oz, Mitumoso, V'chalo Vitala Ligdusha, Liz Merkava Lashem. That is, well, the general energy of Olam Hazeh itself, which is the Klipas Nega, which comes from Klipas Nega. And at this time it comes from Klipas Nega. But as Am Yisrael does its service and becomes a chariot to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as again collectively, individually, but ultimately when every individual does his Avodah, collectively all of Am Yisrael becomes this chariot of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the energy of Olam Hazeh, which is at this time receiving from Klipas Nega, from that medium, from that that klipa, which is the intermediary between Kedusha and Klipas, and Shalosh Klipas Atmei is a lower level of Klipa, which there the impurity is intense and there's no way to be able to elevate it. Again, we spoke about this a number of times, and please, I encourage you to have clarity, if you're a newcomer, to have clarity in these terms, which are important and crucial to understand these chapters, and generally understand how this fits in our mandate, and importantly in our important mandate of fulfilling, implementing Hashem's master plan. Again, it's important, these terms, but understanding what the term of Klipas Nega shows, Klipas Atmei, is again in which. But basically, again, to which you can see in the previous classes, we spoke about this time and again, and namely in this very chapter, towards the beginning, and again in a few classes in this very dealing with the very chapter. Even though we spoke about it in the past, and its original place in chapter 6, which are, again, as we mentioned when we discussed this term in this very chapter, you could always go back to chapter 6 and 7. Even 6, which we again even elaborated more, which is easy to access on this very website, for that matter, with the text, and again to be able to have an appreciation of of these terms. But again, we even took the time in this very chapter to elaborate the klipas nega and the shalosh klipas atmegas, meaning say that level of impurity which is not yet that intense. Nega means there's a bit of light. It's neutral type of klipa that has the ability to be elevated. It can go forth, and it, God forbid, could regress as well, digress, because it has the ability, because it's neutral, and one could utilize, just like neutral, you can go forward and reverse. And in this case, you take this which is neutral, meaning to say which is not kedusha, like an apple is not a peret tefillin, but an apple receives its energy from klipas nega, and therefore it can be elevated. I make a bracha on it, I eat it for a godly purpose, I follow with that godly purpose, I learn Torah and I do mitzvahs with the energy of the apple. The apple is elevated and becomes like a carbon, like the Alter Rebbe's Lashon, becomes an important sacrifice to Hashem. And God forbid if I take the energy and I do an Aveira with that energy, I speak Lashon Hara with the energy that I had, the apple, what I did was I took the apple and I reversed it, which means till now it's receiving its energy from the neutral klipa, and now it's receiving its energy. I brought it into shalosh klipas atmeis, a lower level of impurity, because that was the reason, and I used that koach, the strength of the energy which I received from that apple, to speak Lashon Hara, for example. Lashon Hara is associated and with shalosh klipas atmeis, with a lower level of impurity, which has no aliyah, which has no elevation of Hashem. You cannot take some, like we mentioned many times, you can't take a non-kosher piece of meat and even make a bracha on it and consume it and say, I have the energy, now I can sit and learn a Blad Gemara. And this contributed to my learning, to my understanding. It's impossible to elevate the non-kosher piece of meat, because Hashem says, do not eat it. Hashem is telling you this is receiving its energy from the intense level of impurity, the shalosh klipas atmeis. There's no light, and therefore one has to disengage with it. And learning Torah, doing anything, you're bringing the Torah, whatever you're doing, down to the level of shalosh klipas atmeis, because ein lehem aliyah, you cannot utilize them for anything good, because Hashem says this is what Hashem wanted. This is the Aveda. This is where Hashem says do not engage with that. As opposed to an apple, I should engage. I could, if I'm hungry and I need to learn, want to learn Torah, want to have a clear mind. And if I won't eat the apple, I won't have that ability to learn Torah. The hour, in the next hour or so, and because I'm simply hungry, and I take the apple and I eat it, make a bracha and I eat it for this godly sake and purpose, and I follow through for that hour learning Torah, I elevated the apple. How can I elevate the apple? Because the apple, on the one hand, the apple is neutral before I engage with it, before I eat it, l'shem shamayim, before I make a bracha on it. But I have the ability to transform, meaning to say, to change, to make a change in where the apple is receiving its energy from. Till now it's receiving its energy from klipas nega, and now it's receiving its energy from kedusha, like a korban, like a sacrifice, which is a mitzvah and a symbol of the submission of Elam Hazard to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the point of the sacrifice. So right now it's receiving its energy from kedusha. To a certain extent, like any tashmish kedusha, like a pair of tefillin, for example. The only thing the pair of tefillin doesn't need, the pair of tefillin on its own becomes a chefshesh kedusha before me utilizing it to HaKadosh for godliness. As opposed to the apple, it's neutral in the onset, and I make the change, I make the difference when I eat it, l'shem shamayim, I elevate it. So it's the apple, and then the chayis of my nefesh bahamis, the soul which vitalizes me as a human being, is transformed, and then the entire Elam Hazeh, the physical world which is receiving its energy, till Mashiach's coming, or till now, till the Am Yisrael is doing Torah mitzvahs, till the time of Geula. Again, it doesn't mean that it's just at once, it's an accumulative process, but when Mashiach comes, the world we have accomplished, we had completely transformed already the entire chayas of the entire Elam Hazeh. Again, as the Torah mitzvahs which were done in the last 3,300 years, again, Hashem is the one who decides when the cup becomes full, but till the moment the cup becomes full, it's still, Elam Hazeh is still receiving its energy. via the channel of Klipas Nega. And I say via the channel because in the end of the day, it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is vitalizing everything. But nonetheless, there are different channels and different layers which channel the godly energy. Like someone's going to say, well, why can't I eat a non-kosher piece of meat? Isn't it in Mulvade? Everything is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is everything. So what's giving the meat the piece of its life and in energy? It's not God, so it's God, so it's holy, so it's divine, so let me eat it. Even not L'Shem Shamayim, this is God. No, but it's nonsense. Even L'Shem Shamayim, it's nonsense because it goes through the channel. The godly energy goes through the channel, shows Klipas Atmeis, which is the lower level of the Klipa. There's no light in it. Therefore, the impurity becomes so intense. Hashem says, disengage with it, don't deal with it, as opposed to something neutral. But generally, the Elam Haz is receiving its energy from Klipas Nega. If not, the world itself would scream, would demonstrate in Mulbade. But it was no channels. It was not funneled through any other layer or any other energy. So the world would obviously be aligned and identify itself with the Eined Mulbade, with Hashem Echad, and on its own, before the Yid does his Avodah, not necessarily, and quite on the contrary. The Alter begins the chapter 36. He says just the opposite. The world, the world does everything else other than demonstrate the Achdus Hashem, again, prior to the Yid Avodah. We are Megala, we reveal the Emes Hashem La'ilam. We draw the godliness into the Eilam, and we reveal the godly reality within Eilam. But because on its own, everything is again coming from Hashem, but it's channel and it's funnel and it's through the again, these are the two levels, Klipas Nega or Sholos Klipas Atmeis, which is lower level of Klipa. But generally, the world itself, as long as it's not associated, directly connected to any sin, the world on its own is receiving its energy from Klipas Nega, from that neutral Klipa. So if I transform the neutrality of this Klipa, and this neutral Klipa, and I transform it to a lakus, to godliness, by that particular mitzvah, and by extension to this, or together with that, everything which allowed me to keep the mitzvah, to do the mitzvah. The energy which I gained through eating the piece of bread, to the piece of bread again follows along in that transformation and that elevation. So to my Nefesh HaChiyunis, my vitalizing soul, which is also receives its energy. You can see in chapter 6, the Nefesh HaChiyunis, Nefesh HaBahamis receives its energy from Klipas Nega, and therefore it's also transformed. And then the entire world, as he says, a world which till now is receiving its energy from Klipas Nega, will emerge from its impurity, v'chala'asa, from its illness, Vitala ligdusha, and it'll elevate itself and ascend to holiness, that the world will become Merkava Hashem, a chariot to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now the famous Gemara which says that Mashiach will come when one will want to take off a te'ena, a fig on Shabbos, the fig will scream to the Yid, Shabbos, it's Shabbos, don't take me off the tree, it's a violation. Why is the te'ena screaming? Why the te'ena? Why is the fig itself telling the Yid, do not take me off the tree because it's in violation of Hashem's desire? And the answer is because right now, the te'ena, because it's receiving its energy, through Klipas Nega, it is not yet in tuned, or it's not yet, you don't have that direct flow. It's still receiving its energy via Klipas Nega, so it doesn't yet demonstrate that Hashem Echad, which is really the only source, in essence, the only source which is really vitalizing it, but because it's channeled through Klipas Nega, so it's not demonstrating the oneness of Hashem on its own. When Mashiach will come, the Te'enu itself will say Shabbos, because it removed itself, as he says over here, Teitze, it's going to emerge from its tumah, from its chala, from its level, from its impurity, and it's going to be elevated to Kedusha. It itself is going to be a chariot to God. And just like a chariot, again, as we mentioned, a chariot just follows the dictates of the rochev, of the one who's on the chariot, the rider, and so too in this case the rider is Hashem, and the world itself becomes a chariot to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the world itself on its own demonstrates this Einei Mulvade, this oneness of Hashem. And as he says, he goes on, the scholars created with Hashem's honor will be revealed, that the physical flesh will be able to see Elokus godliness. And again, we mentioned this a few times, that the pasuk is precise. With the term basar Yishayo, again, the pasuk in Yishayo is precise with this very term, because we're not dealing with the neshama seeing Elokus. The neshama is part of God. The neshama, the nefesh elikis, that is part of Hashem, and it's all about Elokus, and it's all about godliness. What Yishayahu is saying, but all called basar, the physical flesh, will together, in unison, all physical flesh will be able to see and identify and be part of this revelation of Hashem's honor. And therefore, they'll have a clear vision, but what the basar itself will together, Yafta will see, Elokus will identify with godliness. Hashem will appear with the strength of His glory, with the pride of His glory, the intense pride of Hashem's glory. V'imolei kved Hashem. With the glory of Hashem will again the glory of Hashem will appear upon the world, upon Am Yisrael, and ultimately upon the entire world. V'imolei kved Hashem is kol ha'oretz. The honor of Hashem will fill the entire land, the Oretz itself. Remember, we mentioned the pasuk in these psukim Yeshaya with Alter Rambam actually concludes this entire sefer with that pasuk. U'molo ha'oretz de'es Hashem, that the land itself will be filled with the knowledge of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not Shamayim, not Gan Eden, not Gan Eden Ha'elyon, not Gan Eden Ha'tachton, but the very physical Oretz itself will be full with the knowledge of Hashem. And in this case, the Alter Rebbe brings the pasuk, "B'molei kved Hashem es kol ha'oretz." The honor of Hashem will fill the physicality of this very physical world. We Yisrael and Yidden, which were those who brought this into fruition, with their ma'aseihem and v'avodas, their doings and their service, they will see ayin b'ayin, eye to eye, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And again, here you're dealing with the physical ayin, not the spiritual ayin. Their physical eye will be able to see God, again, eye to eye with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kibbeh Matan Torah. We had a little preview of that by Matan Torah. What is it by Matan Torah? And understandably, the difference is, like any difference of a preview. The preview and the actual presentation. The preview is a preview, and then and Matan Torah was the preview, and Mashiach will come. This will become the norm. But that Kodesh Baruch Hu, Matan Torah, in the very beginning of this, the establishment, or the beginning, the commencement, the opening of this, the presentation of this master plan, which will primarily be Matan Torah. Kodesh Baruch Hu gave that preview in order for us to understand what we ought to do, what we eventually need to do in order to make this the norm, again, which is generally the objective of any preview, to give us an understanding of the actual presentation. And that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did by Matan Torah. And what does he say? And what does it say by Matan Torah? Very similar. It says, Ata horeisa ladas. Horeisa means to say, not you just threw a message. Horeisa, like Rashi says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu opened up all the heavens, and he appeared as he is, b'mlei kvede, with his full honor and glory. And that's why the Torah doesn't just say that you notified us, but rather horeisa, l'shenriya, that we're able to see eye to eye with Hashem. Ladas, that we should be able to have that das, that knowledge, ki Hashem Elokim, that Hashem, Hu Elokim, Einei Levad, there's nothing else than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is a pasuk which said the Matan Torah. So we had that experience already. Again, microcosmically, but the point is to make this the norm, and this is what it was going to be. This is going to be the norm when Mashiach will come. And through this, and the entire Shalosh Krivas Atmeis will be completely swallowed and be completely annulled. And as we explained, last week. We touched upon this message as well. When you have two sides which are connected by a bridge, and one is solid and it's helping the other exist when there is a bridge and is connecting to the other side, and the other side is dependent, and the other side doesn't have its own strength. Quite on the contrary, it's weaker, but it's being held via this bridge. So when the bridge breaks apart, it will obviously and probably and more so, more than possible and probable, it will almost it will lead to that the other side will fall apart, because the only reason it had its strength is because the bridge which connected to this other side, which was solid and well anchored and well built. And similarly, a solid, well anchored, well built, that's Kedusha, which is absolute, which is associated with the absoluteness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Anything which is associated with Torah, mitzvahs, this is the Ratzon Hashem. Hashem is Ein Sof. Hashem is the Kedusha Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're dealing rather with the Kedusha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is solid. Again, this is what is real. Ein Eid Milvado is real. Hashem Echad is real. And the other extreme, you have the Shalosh Klipas Atmeis, which is the nadir level of impurity, which is the most unreal, as it's diametrically in the other extreme, meaning say so opposite and so distant from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from Hashem Echad. What keeps this, and obviously that is by definition something which should be weak in a certain extent. It causes a lot of problems and it evokes the person Chas v'Shalom to distance the Yid from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But yet by definition, because it's so distant from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, therefore it has from the perspective of it's distant from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is Hashem Elikim Chaim, or Elikim Emes. Hashem is all about life, so that's all about death. It's mavis, like the Torah says, Chaim Besa mavis. Mavis associated with tumah, with impurity, especially the nadir level of impurity of the Shalosh Klipas Atmeis. What keeps that going is that bridge of Klipas Nega, the neutral Klipa. So when the neutral Klipa is transformed, this bridge, which is the neutral Klipa, is transformed to Kedusha. And in this case, again, as in the mashal, as in the parable, it falls apart, means to say it doesn't receive anymore, the world doesn't receive anymore from Klipas Nega. Klipas Nega itself falls apart and is consumed and is elevated to Kedusha, so there's no more bridge. So what happens to Shalosh Klipas Atmeis? It crumbles. That's what he says. Like balu, it will be swallowed. These batul legamri, and completely an old kol Shalosh Klipas Atmeis. The entire energy of Shalosh Klipas Atmeis, because their nourishment, the chayusin, and their vitality, makdusha, from the holiness, actually from the side of Kedusha right now, comes via Klipas Nega, via the channel of Klipas Nega. Hamutzas, which is the intermediary between Kedusha and Shalosh Klipas Atmeis, Hamutzas beinayim, which is again in between them. And what does it mean? It's receiving its energy from Kedusha. We know this is nothing more distant than Kedusha. Shalosh Klipas Atmeis, there's nothing more distant than Shalosh Klipas Atmeis from Kedusha. You can't think of anything more distant. So what does it mean it's receiving from Kedusha? And the answer is, we pointed out time and again, there isn't any other energy than any independent energy other than Hashem. So Shalosh Klipas Atmeis are also receiving its energy from Hashem. That non-kosher piece of meat, if Hashem would not continue to vitalize it, it wouldn't just ruin or break apart. It just would cease to exist, like anything else in Elam has. HaKadosh Baruch Hu mechadish b'tul b'chol yom tovim ma'aseh v'edus. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is pumping his energy integration every day, every moment, every second. So there is no independent energy. And again, if Hashem pulls back the energy, the item ceases to exist. It's not only something dies, expires. The stone, we even gave an example, the stone, which is in the inanimate part of Elam Hazah, which which on the surface it seems lifeless, doesn't move, it stands in one place. For thousands of years it can stand in one place. But yet, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is vitalizing that stone every single moment. And if HaKadosh Baruch Hu will pull back the energy or stop giving the energy to that stone, the stone will literally cease to exist, which shows the connection of every part of El Maza with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, including that non-kosher piece of meat. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu stops giving it chayas, it would disappear, but it would disappear, it would cease to exist. But yet, in the same token, which again demonstrates its connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but yet we cannot eat it, we can't disengage with it, because as we mentioned, it goes through these layers and layers till ultimately it goes through that intense layer of Shalosh Kibsat Meis, that channel, that funnel of Shalosh Kibsat Meis, which when it receives its energy, there is no more light, there's no more godliness, there's no more overt godliness, and therefore Hashem says, stay away from it. This is what impurity is all about. The devoid, like darkness, which is the devoid of light, even though it does say the darkness itself has its own entity, Yetzer, creates Chesed, but again, it could be a separate subject, but we can identify with this idea that the Tumah itself, not only is it devoid of Kedusha, but Tumah itself, once there's no Kedusha, it is about an expansion of the dark, of its darkness, expansion of its impurity, and therefore Hashem says, stay away from it. In the same token, it's receiving its energy from Kedusha because nothing is independent, but it goes through all these layers. So, this is what we said, it's the bridge of Klipas Nega, which connects the flow of energy from Kedusha ultimately into the channel of Shalosh Kibsat Meis, which becomes the source and the chayis of all this, which Hashem says do not engage with. Again, we gave them classically this classic case of meat, rather non-kosher piece of meat. But and therefore, yes, it's receiving from Kedusha, but remains Shalosh Kibsat Meis. But again, getting back to this, what the message over here, once the bridge falls apart, Klipas Nega, which means the whole world is elevated, the whole world is in tune to the Hashem Echad, to the Ein Yid Milvadei, so Shalosh Kibsat Meis will completely fall apart. And it says, be swallowed and be annulled, legamri, completely. So what comes out of this? V'nimtza ki kol tachel shel Meis HaMashiach B'chis HaMeis, the whole objective, or the whole point of the days of Mashiach, of the resurrection of the dead, which what is going to take place then, which is Gilui Kvedei V'Elokus Yisborach, the revelation of the honor of Hashem and the godly energy of Hashem, Ulahavi Ruach Hatum Min Oretz, and to rid the spirit of impurity from the land. Totally, all dependent of drawing the godly energy, and the infinite light, the nefesh hachayunis shebechol Yisrael, to the vitalizing soul which exists by all Yid, in all its 248 limbs. And how do you draw godliness to the vitalizing soul which exists by every single Yid? That it should penetrate its 248 limbs, which again, this is ultimately when every single Yid will draw the godly energy within its own nefesh hachayunis, its vitalizing soul, that it should penetrate its 248 limbs. This individual Yid does it, and that individual Yid does it, and eventually this leads to the Yemais HaMashiach, as again, based on all this in the above-mentioned explanation. And this leads to Tchias HaMeisim. It means Tchias HaMeisim. And Yemais HaMashiach, which is all about revelation of the honor of Hashem, all about the revelation of the godliness. And consequently, the total removal of the impure spirit and the impurity which exists within El Maza, is all dependent of me learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, again based on this explanation. Or as the Alter Rebbe shows you what transpires when I learn Torah and I do mitzvahs, the godly energy penetrates and infiltrates into the nefesh hachayunis. It melts or is transformed, is elevated to a lukus, meaning that the godly energy flows through the 248 limbs of the Yid who performs the mitzvah. Again, al yidei, by the Yid kiyuma, the Yid fulfilling its Kol HaMachmitzvah, say the 248 mitzvahs, which we know correspond to the 248 limbs, as we mentioned last week, that it's not just a number a corresponding number, but there's something intrinsic. They're intrinsically connected because through my 248 limbs, mitzvahs, rather, the performance of 248 mitzvahs, the godly energy flows through my 248 limbs, or lahavia, and similarly, when it comes to mitzvahs leisas, to get rid of the ruach hatumah, the overall spirit of impurity, which exists within the entire world, depends on my being careful and scrupulous with the shmira, with the guarding of the 365 mitzvahs leisesa. In other words, as we explained before, in the last week's chapter, that this is what the importance, again, of being so careful, chas v'shalom, not to violate any mitzvah leisesa, because what happens is that there's the negative and the impure energy which flows through my sinews with every violation of any of the 365 mitzvahs, of maybe the Torah commands or the Rabbanon, the rabbinic commands which extend, which are the branches of these 365 mitzvahs leisesa. What happens is that the impure spirit flows through my sinews, and therefore anchors me in areas, anchors me to this impure spirit, the impurity, the spirit of the impurity of Shalosh Chibsat Mehis, which again, as we explained, that's very grave, because Ein Lahem Aliyah La'elah, by definition, they cannot be elevated. So in order that the entire world should, the Ruach HaTumah, the spirit of impurity, should be obliterated from the entire world, depends as well, just like again, that God should be manifest in this very physical world, throughout the entire world, depends on the particular Yid fulfilling the 248 mitzvahs asay, which causes that the godly energy flows through his nefesh hayunis into his 248 limbs. Similarly, in order to get rid of the ruach hatumah through the entire world, is by me being very careful with my 365 mitzvahs leisas, that with this I make sure that the ruach hatumah, the pure spirit, stays away and is completely removed from my system as an individual, which again, that causes that the entire world, based on as the Alter Rebbe culminates that the how it reflects on the entire world, that eventually there is complete obliteration, and yizbalu, and the complete nullification of this ruach hatumah, the impurity which exists within Olam Hazeh. It all depends in the individuals guarding the 365 mitzvahs leisas. That it's 365 sinews. Again, you see that the corresponding number, there's 365 sinews corresponding to 365 mitzvahs leisas. The negative mitzvahs, the Hashem says, do not do. Again, in the number 365, but again, it's not just something extrinsic. The connection 365, but no, the connection is intrinsic, meaning to say, because when chas v'shalom a person violates any avera, there is the negative and impure energy which just flows through those sinews which are in the same number of 365. And when I am careful, I am the one, again, ultimately, which is causes on this macro level. In the entire world, there is a complete obliteration and nullification of the Chatumah, the impure spirit, in the entire world. Ki klolos Yisrael Shem Shishim Ribu Neshamas Pratis Hem klolos Achayis Ul Kol Ha'elam. And here the Alter Rebbe is going to go and say, because in the ultimately Yidden, which are Shishim Ribui, perhaps we'll stop over here where we're via Shlayim Kumimeno Shasagidel, which is again just almost to the middle of the page of Memches, and God willing we'll connect we'll follow this in the following class from the words Ki Klolos Yisrael Shem Shishim Ribu Neshamas Pratis, what the Alter Rebbe is going to say, because ultimately there is it's by because of Bereshis Bara Likimas Hashem Ba'aretz, Hashem created the world for Te'ah, for Am Yisrael, and therefore the energy which flows into this world is channeled through via Am Yisrael, again with this very same number of Am Yisrael, which in the overall there's Shishim Ribui, 600,000, even though there's many more neshamas, because from every neshama, Dr. Rebbe is going to explain, every neshama there's different sparks, which creates, ultimately becomes another neshama to another person. But in the end of the day, the energy flows also in the same number of Shishim Ribui, and again, when the Shishim Ribui do their Aveda, the Klolos Am Yisrael, meaning the 600,000 neshamas do their Aveda. With that, they transform this light and this energy which is coming into Elam Haza, again, which the world was created for Teda, or Bereshis, Beis Bereshis for Am Yisrael, and therefore it was created for Am Yisrael. The energy which comes into Elam Haza, into this physical world, also corresponds the same number of Am Yisrael, and therefore when Am Yisrael transforms with their Aveda, their Nefesh HaChayunis, there's vitalizing soul again, to Kedusha, there's nothing else would remain, there's no other energy which remains within Elam Haza, which you can say that is not transformed and does not reveal the Hashem Echad, the Ein Mevadi, because it corresponds the same number, because it was created for the Torah and for the Yid. So there's Shishim Ribu. So it's the energy, the energy which comes to Elam Haza is in the same number, is in the same. It corresponds to the number of the Yid, and therefore when the Yidden when the Am Yisrael does their Aveda, there's not one part in Elam Haza, there will not be not one part in Elam Haza which will not demonstrate this Hashem Echad. And even in the example which we gave, it doesn't matter if you take off a fig. If one wants to, chas v'shalom, even inadvertently, want to take off a fig in a tree in Brooklyn, in Bnei Brak, in Yerushalayim, or in Timbuktu, or in China, in India, and so on, because and it'll scream the same Shabbos. It'll demonstrate the same Hashem Echad, because the energy, again, is basically the message of Hashem in the subsequent class. The energy corresponds to the exact amount of energy which comes to this world. The energy rather which comes into this physical world corresponds with precision towards to the Neshamas Yisrael, the Shishim Ribu, and when all of Am Yisrael does their Aveda, there won't be any one place within Elam Haza will not demonstrate, will not be part of this demonstration of the Kved Hashem, as the Lashon is Kol Ha'aretz, the entire land will demonstrate the oneness of Hashem. And again, will the world itself, and Yidden, primarily Yidden, and the world itself will be able to see eye to eye with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as he says, Yisrael Yiru Ayin B'Ayin, but more so the entire world will be part of this very presentation of Ein Milvadei. Have a wonderful evening.